Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. And if everyone can hear me. Hopefully people have got headsets or I'll try and shout, if not. We've got a bit of a full house. I think we were sort of expecting that about today, this session in particular. So it's absolutely lovely to see you all. Before we start, I'd actually like to say just a big thank you to Pink Bows, who have sponsored the main stage for the event. Pink Bows, if anyone's not come across Pink Bows, the charity has come out of Astroworld and the tragedy that happened to Madison Jabisky, and it's her father Brian and her family who have put together Pink Bows. Now, if you haven't come across them, please take a moment to have a look afterwards, because they're a very special organisation and they're working closely with a number of us at the moment. So thank you all so much for showing up today. It's lovely to see people in person rather than on LinkedIn. So today's topic of conversation is tackling inconsistencies across local authority boundaries. For some reason, they've asked me to chair this session, mainly probably because I run a security company, so that seemed like a sensible bet at the time. So my name's Marie Chebib, and I'm the chair of the UK CMA, which is the United Kingdom Crowd Management Association. So we look after people who work in crowds, essentially. In a minute, I'm going to come to my panellists to introduce themselves. I think it's fair to say that this panel's actually developed quite a lot in the last few weeks. I think the debate today is going to focus on primary authority and the Purple Guide, so that's what we're looking at today. It was a slightly wider session when we first started, but it's now most important to focus on that. So I'm going to get rid of some elephants in the room before we start. I think this debate has raised a lot of questions for the industry. I think quite a lot of us have been doing a lot of reading. There's been lots of discussion on LinkedIn. We've all seen it, and there's no doubt a number of us are here to kind of maybe find out. I think some of us are genuinely unsure about what primary authority is. And I think there are some very vocal people, who some of whom are here and some of whom are not, who need a chance to have their say and ask questions. So we're going to balance this session by going for a short presentation from Ian and Jim. We're then going to go to some difficult questions, which I have craftily constructed for you, so on a quick fire round, and then we'll come to the audience after that. So that's the way it's going to work today. We'll do our best in the 40 minutes we've got. I did ask Chris, can we run over? And he said maybe a little bit, so we'll see how we go for time today. It's really important today that we're respectful of each other. This is a professional debate and needs to remain so. I will stand by that both here and on social media as well, in terms of what we're looking to do. I'm really a great believer at the UK CMA in collaborative and positive approach to things, and we need to remain collaborative and positive as an industry. If we can't do that, then you know, we're throwing away some really golden opportunities. So I'm just going to quote a friend, some of whom may have read on LinkedIn yesterday. I do believe that everyone involved cares deeply about the industry and about keeping people safe at events. We simply approach the challenges from different perspectives, and that's healthy, provided we listen to each other rather than become polarised. And there's so much polarisation in society at the moment, so let's try and make this not one of those debates. So that's the starting point. If that isn't enough reminders, we're being filmed, so anyone who is feeling like being impolite, you're going to be on film. Number two, I work in security, so just I'll remind you all of that as well. So on that note, I'd like just to go to introductions. So Ian and Jim, hello. Thank you for being brave enough to come on stage today. So Ian, do you want to start, maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name's Ian Baird. I've worked in the outdoor events industry for around 25 years now, and it's my second home. I currently work with Brighton and Hove City Council. I have worked there for around 4 years, having previously run and managed my own events business. So I currently sit as the Outdoor Events Development Manager for Brighton and Hove, and am a director with the EIF.
Thanks. Jim.
Right, I'm Jim Winship. I run the Event Services Association, but I also run the biggest event, I think, in the Southwest, British Firework Championships in Plymouth, among various other events around the country at various stages, both corporate and external ones.
Thank you both for joining us. Jim, I'm going to come to you for just a real quick couple of minutes on the history of both primary authority and maybe a VIF to give people an understanding of where maybe it's come from.
Well, let's start with the EIF. The Events Industry Forum was brought together by Steve Heap, who's somewhere in the audience, I think, the idea was to bring all the various trade bodies across the industry together so that they could deal with major issues collectively rather than individually. And that gave them a much more powerful voice than they would have otherwise had. We took over, once the forum was set up, one of the key things that came about was that we wanted to see the Purple Guide updated. It was originally published by the HSE back in the early 90s, and it was not being updated, and we were concerned that a lot of people were referring to it, but a lot of the information was really out of date. And we had long meetings with the HSE, and they started down the process of updating it, and then got told that they could only deal with health and safety. And people wanted to know how many toilets and things they should have at events rather than necessarily all just health and safety stuff. So after protracted discussions with the HSE, it was agreed by them, and I think actually they suggested it at the time, that we should take it over and start publishing it ourselves, but they would endorse it and support it, which they have done right up to now. So, and the aim of the guide is very much to provide you with the sort of broad information you need as event organisers. It's not prescriptive. Throughout the guide, we talk about the need to do health risk assessments, and that we recognise that every event is unique. So it's not a prescriptive guide. And I think out of that, we also recognise that there are always new things happening in the industry, and different people interpret guidance in different ways. And there was a need somewhere for us to come together to really provide some support to people in the industry where they had questions and things. And having been involved myself in other areas with primary authority, I suggested that we should actually explore the idea of primary authority. And we'll explain that. Ian will explain it in detail shortly. We started off originally talking to Liverpool. Unfortunately, the key person there left in the middle of our discussions with them, and also there were various admin problems, I think, within Liverpool Council. We moved to Leicester and then ran into similar problems. Local authorities are having a tough time at the moment, so it's difficult to get them to support things other than what their primary roles are. And then Ian at Brighton suddenly stepped up and said, come and talk to me. So we started working with Ian, and we're working very closely with Ian to get this on the road, and I think it'll potentially make a huge difference for this industry if it's used properly. But we'll explain it first.
Jim, thank you. I hope that's I hope that's given everybody a bit of a background to where we are right now. So, Ian, I'm going to come to you because I know we just want to give a slight present. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, if that's all right, to do this quick fire presentation, if that's okay with you, mate. So, over to you.
Absolutely. So we'll run through this presentation. Those of you who might be aware, we have got 2 webinars which we will be releasing links to soon. This presentation will be rerun in those spaces, so if you want to see this again, please do go to that, because I'm going to move relatively quickly through it today because we are limited for time. I'm going to hit a button, and hopefully something will happen on the screen to the side of me. Yep, there we go. So a little outline of today. We're going to give an overview of what the primary authority scheme is, how we're going to apply that to the Purple Guide, which is the really interesting and new thing. What mechanisms there are with primary authorities, that's assured advice and opinions that can be given, how that will be of practical use for event organisers and local authorities, and a bit around the cost structure and access and how that's going to work. So first of all, overview of the scheme. I'm clicking, and we'll go on to the next slide if we could. I'm going to go slightly Chris Whitty on it. So the Primary Authority Scheme is an established national scheme that enables businesses to partner with one local authority to gain some consistent advice and guidance interpretation. So this is about interpretation of guidance. This isn't about changing the guidance into law. And businesses are able to receive reliable and consistent compliance guidance through a statutory partnership, and that's how that works. That's how it's organised. So it's a statutory agreement between those groups. The benefits there. Any second now. Here we go. The benefits of a single point of contact. We get unified guidance interpretation. So that single point of contact means that we have consistent advice, and that should be respected by other regulators across England. It gives some confidence for business because they can test bed new operational ideas and know that that will be feeding directly back into the guidance, and the relevant chapter authors or industry experts will be able to have a look at what they're proposing, and there's an option to minimise risk of conflicting advice across the UK for people who work across various other various authorities. Thank you. So this is a new application of the scheme. Traditionally, it's been applied to regulation, and I think this is where we've seen some confusion in some of the interpretation we've seen online. What we're proposing here is an application of this scheme as a methodology or a system to guidance. This is not about changing that guidance into law. It's about ensuring that we get a common interpretation of the guidance across various areas, and an ability for where there are differences of interpretation, they can be cleaned up and reviewed and then feed back into the guidance to mean that the guidance improves in a far quicker rate. I won't go all through all that slide because I know I'm limited on time, so we'll keep rolling on. It's limited to England. The statutory authority type agreements are devolved matters, so currently this would not apply to Scotland and it would not apply to Wales. So it would be an England test bed initially, but there is the ability to strike those arrangements with the two devolved authorities to expand that at a later date. So to give you an idea of some of the mechanisms that we're going to be looking at, there is the system of assured advice. Now, this is something that is most likely not going to be used except in very rare circumstances when we look at the application to Purple Guide. Assured advice means that there is a quasi-legal status to the advice that is given. That does not relate to guidance because we do not want to turn guidance into a regulation. So the most common way in which we will share information from the statutory partnership will be through opinions. So we will give an opinion that frames how we review the issue that's raised, and that will then guide the improvement of the guidance directly. There is an ability to have some dispute resolution through this process. So if there is two local authorities that have a difference of opinion, or an organiser or local authority who have a difference of opinion, we are able to offer a third party to that conversation. And I'll take you through the line of how that might work in a moment. And there will also be an appeals process in place. So while that's not fully designed yet, we're very much at an early stage in this process, there will be a full appeals process put in place to go alongside that. So opinions are related to non-legislative measures. So the primary authority can offer opinions on issues not explicitly covered by legislation. So that gives some guidance on that issue. It's non-binding. So other local authorities do not have to take that opinion, but it does mean that is confirmed as complying with the guidance. And it also gives an opportunity to support due diligence with organisers so they can test their ideas before they go to market. We'll go straight on to the next slide, please. Thank you. In fact, we'll just skip over this because I know we're a bit short on time, and I can see Annie coming straight to me. So we'll just go straight on to this line. So cost structure and access. So the agreement will exist between the Events Industry Forum and Brighton Hove City Council. That means members or subscribers to the members of the EIF or subscribers to the Purple Guide will have access. If you do not fall into those two categories, you do not have access to the scheme. There will be an initial charge model of £150. So an application to check something through the guidance would be a £150 initial fee. If it's a very complex case, there will be additional charging structures on top of that. It has to be a cost recovery service. There is no local authority currently that would be able to offer this as a free of charge. We'll go straight over because we just talked about the eligibility as well. To give you an idea of what that application process looks like. So an applicant submits the query to the EIF. The EIF will then triage that request, and where clarification is required, the primary authority would then be engaged to give that clarification. The primary authority, Brighton Hove, would then contact the applicant and the relevant local authorities. So this is a data gathering exercise. It's not for Brighton Hove to make that decision, it's for us to go and gather the data. We then collate that, share with the relevant chapter authors, or where relevant, we will reach out to industry professionals. So there may have been a change in status of the previous author, or there may be somebody else who is the current leading expert within that area. We would share that information with them. That would then be collated together and returned to the EIF to feed back to the member to give that outcome. So we are acting as a collatory service for that. And where relevant, that opinion would then be shared via the portal for other local authorities to read, and updates made to the Purple Guide for all subscribers. That's it from me. I don't know how I did on 5 minutes, but
about 6.5. But I'll give you that.
I'll take that. Thanks.
Not bad at all.
And there's just a little layout of some of the highlights of that there. But I'm very willing to share this presentation if anybody wants it after today.
Yeah, we'll come back to Chris and see if we can share that with the recording. So just to get an understanding from everybody who's here, how many people work in more than one county or more than one area in the UK? Can you show of hands for that? So quite a lot of us are working across a number of local authorities, and we're likely to get inconsistent information. How many people do find they get, out of those that are working cross-county, how many find they get inconsistent information from different SAGs and groups? Ooh, not as many. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, I'm particularly pleased to see our young, up-and-coming members of the audience here and here, so yeah, well done for you guys. So I've got some questions really for you both. I hope that's okay. Ian, I'm going to start with you and then come to you, Jim, if I may. Ian, I think obviously that's explained what you're intending to do, but what stage is this at? Is this a done deal yet, or are we kind of miles away? Because it feels from what I'm reading that we're kind of close to this, but where are we at?
We're in the foothills of this, to be honest, Yanni. The reason... There's been a lot of work on this, and Jim laid that out about the timeline over a number of years. The reason that we haven't got to this consultation stage previously is that there's the Whitehall piece to this picture as well. So we've been talking to the Department of Business and Trade and looking at whether or not the mechanism of primary authority could be related to guidance, because it is traditionally around legislation. So that's a really important piece. So we needed to figure that out, whether or not this was even an option. Now, at the point where the Department of Business Trade have said, yes, there's potential here, we're going to pass it to the Secretary of State to look at, that felt to us the natural point to go, okay, there might be something here. Now we need to talk to industry and see how this works, how this fits together, and how we can design that scheme to really work as a benefit and not a crutch to the industry.
So on the summary of that, DBT have basically said maybe.
Yeah.
And obviously the next step is to go out to industry for consultation, correct?
Absolutely. So, and to be clear, if the Secretary of State says, yep, good, that doesn't make it magically happen. That means that it's cleared to happen, and then the decision about when this becomes real is to be decided through the EF and Brighton. So there's a long, long way to go from here, and we need to make sure everyone's happy that it's going to be of a benefit, really.
So we don't have an actual timeline yet, but we are. No. But actually, we are in fairly early stages of this. So
absolutely, foothills.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's very much going to depend on when the Secretary of State gets around to actually looking at it, I think, and that could take some time. I think one of the important things really to sort of stress here is we're not trying to make the Purple Guide into legislation, because that is not what this is all about. It's trying to provide a means really for people in the industry to get some opinions and clarification where they're trying to interpret what's in the Purple Guide. And it helps us improve the Purple Guide, to be quite honest, as well. So, and we want that to be the best we can possibly make it. We have really good working groups who advise us, but, you know, you're the guys out there doing the work, and, you know, if you've got any things you think we ought to be looking at or amending in the Purple Guide, please come and tell us, because we want to know that.
Okay, so and that's an interesting question about it not becoming legislation, it not being it's guidance, not legislation, and that's important because obviously lots of local authorities that we come up against will think it's guidance, think it's more than guidance, and that is challenging for people in the industry when actually each event is different, and there's nuances with that, but and we're all a bit, I think everybody feels gutted that HSE do not want to lead on the work, but do you think they want to take it back on at any point? Do you think that's in the offing, or?
Having been dealing for the last 30 or 40 years with government, I think government doesn't want to give that sort of detailed advice. That they're happy to give advice about specifics, like the HSE will give advice about specific risks with health and safety, but actually broader advice. That was why they backed off doing updates to the Purple Guide originally, and I can't see that changing.
So we're staying with a piece that's guidance for the industry by the industry, right? So, okay, that's good to know. And I'm afraid I read a letter from DBT online, which I saw a number of people may have seen it as well on LinkedIn. Isn't primary authority only for legislative pieces? How does that work? Because as I understood it, it relates to legislation rather than guidance. So, Ian, can you talk about that?
I think that's exactly how it has been used, and that's why that process with the Department of Business and Trade was a long one, because we're proposing using that methodology and that system for something else. Now, what that letter online confirmed, this is what I've just confirmed to you today. When it comes to assured advice, absolutely, it has to be in relation to legislation. When it comes to offering opinion, that's for non-legislative matters. So the letter says you can only offer assured advice if it's legislation, and that's true, but we can offer opinion.
Okay, so we're in a position where the remit is only offering opinion to that piece. That's what the primary authority piece would do. And now I'm going to ask what I hope isn't too difficult question. What's the point and what is all the fuss about, if that's the case?
Absolutely, and I think this comes to the crux of it. What we're looking at, like you said previously, we are in a world where we have a industry piece of guidance that is written by industry. Whether we like it or not, that's what we've got. And whether we like it or not, the EIF are currently the custodians of that piece of work. So it is incumbent on us as directors of the EIF to make that guidance as good and as accurate as it can be. So it is our job to look for mechanisms or systems that mean we can get as much information from industry to make sure that we're hitting the key points of change or hitting the key points of friction that are out there in the real world. So what we're looking at here is a system, a methodology that hopefully with buy-in from industry, and let's make no bones about it, if there's no buy-in from industry and there's no buy-in from local authorities, this does nothing. But with buy-in from industry and with buy-in from local authority, it gives a statutory model and methodology to centralise that information, the points of friction and the points of deviation with an adapting industry, so we can make sure that that guidance is reactive and can keep up to date with what those changes look like.
So actually we're looking at the idea is to make the guidance better, and where there are, there might be chapters like the technical chapter where it's very clear, and there might be chapters like, for my sins, the crowd management chapter where it isn't quite so clear. And so do you think the arbiter of certain chapters or giving that, advice over certain chapters is really what we're going to end up with if it's what the industry want? Are you going to listen to the industry if they say, we do not want this?
Yeah, and that's what this phase is about. We did an article in Access All Areas when we had the kind of semi-nod from Department of Business and Trade, and we said, hey, here's an idea. Let's go to EPS and introduce this as an idea and then kick off this consultation process. That consultation process might be a resounding absolutely, we're being recorded, so I won't say that, absolutely not. Or that process might be, okay, great, I see what's trying to be done here, but hey, here's a different way of doing it, and we may, through this conversation, find a different methodology that does the same job. But this is about us presenting, saying, we have a problem, we do have a problem with inconsistency, and that is in part due to vagaries in guidance. I don't think that's the fault of local authorities. I don't think that's the fault of event organisers. I think it's just the nature of the business. But the guidance can be more specific, and this is one way of looking at making that better.
Jim, can I come to you for this as well?
Yeah, I think this industry is very innovative. It comes up with new ideas and new ways of doing things all the time. And sometimes that can create conflicts that we don't really need in the industry. So the more advice we can give and get people to talk and sort of share those ideas, if you like, and find solutions to make them work properly, has got to help the industry, really. And I think one thing I'd really like to make clear is that the Purple Guide is very much about risk assessments. It does recognise every event is unique. We're not dictating, we're not setting out how you should do everything. We're hopefully making you think about everything so that you don't forget something or ignore something. And it's very different. I know we were quoted a little while ago an example of the Institute of Chartered Engineers, for example, produces guidance for structures. We're not trying to compete with something like that. That is technical guidance. That is exactly what the Purple Guide is not. We are general guidance that prompts you to think about all the aspects of your event and hopefully not forget something.
I'm going to have to skip through some of my questions, and I just want to just to confirm then, when it comes to things like the competence of the people that are going to be giving the advice and the working groups that might surround that, and also the appeals process around that, can I confirm that those are not set yet and those are part of the consultation?
Absolutely, that's part of what we're designing now, and that's why we're looking at this scheme and how that grows. So the appeals process is not fully designed. That's part of what we're designing now, and we will design in conversation with industry, and how we assess and ensure those expert panels remain relevant, and how we introduce perhaps statutory partners to those panels to make sure there's some link back to some of those organisations like HSE. That's in chain, that's being designed, and that's part of the conversations we're going to have.
And in terms of the consultation process, can anyone consult within the industry? You're not going to just limit it to those members, are you, who can...
No, the consultation will be open. We are releasing the links to the first two webinars to members first, because I think that's the right thing to do. But then those links will be made available to the public. If they fill up, there is a limited number of spaces. If they fill up, there will be more webinars that will repeat that process. So not infinitely. Well, I don't want to take it in the entire world, but there will be more to make sure we get a good sample.
And we'll be doing something online to allow people to consult, or is it just those processes of webinars? Do you know yet?
It's webinars initially. I think we want to see where that goes. If there's some points of interest, then I think there's like an online survey will probably be the next step.
Okay, that's really good to know. Jim, did you want to come back on that?
I mean, we have approaching 5,000 subscribers to the Purple Guide, and we're very much going to be saying to them, I think, as part of this process, is this something you want or not? Because ultimately it's for the industry's benefit, so we want to make sure that the industry wants it.
And I think there's some very vocal people saying they don't, and there's also some people saying they're not sure. So I think coming back to that, it'll be interesting to see what the results of those are. So can I come back to understand the difference between EIF and the Purple Guide? Because also sometimes they feel like one and the same, but Jim, is that the case or not?
They're not. The Events Industry Forum remains as it was originally founded, really, as a meeting point for trade bodies and organisations across the event industry. And it meets a couple of times a year, discusses all the issues that are going on around the industry, and very occasionally, if we feel there's something that collectively we ought to be doing together, we might help that to happen. We're not a trade body ourselves. We don't try and be that. The EIF Limited, which is effectively Purple Guide Limited in our world, is very much just about publishing the Purple Guide and providing the right guidance, and that's what that's all about. And it has a board of directors who take responsibility for managing that. We're not, although we're directors of the Purple Guide, we're not the authors of the Purple Guide. The Purple Guide is actually written by experts in various fields and working groups. And I wouldn't pretend to know anything about building a stage or managing a crowd necessarily. So, but I can check that it makes sense to everyone.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I hope these aren't too difficult questions, but I have a couple more. Which one gives money to good causes, just so I understand which is which?
So that's EIF Limited as the owner of and custodian of the Purple Guide gives the money that is raised by the Purple Guide back out to good causes.
What was it, about 350,000 so far, is that right?
We're just very close to 350,000 since we started out. So once we've covered our costs, because there are inevitably costs in running any sort of business or organisation, all the money that gets raised, so all the profits basically that come from publishing the Purple Guide go back to the industry in grants. So, that's £350,000 worth, which is not insignificant.
I mean, that's wonderful news, but there is a kind of argument to say you guys have been quite quiet on social media and coming back with a public announcement about any of this, and I know that's difficult because there's a real fine balance between going, okay, we need to say something, to saying actually, if we don't say anything, it doesn't look great. So is there a plan now, apart from today, to speak to people publicly, to do an announcement? Because it's a governance and transparency piece for people. I think that's where it's falling into at the moment. So
I think that's right. And look, the EIF Limited is a group of volunteers. We don't have a flashy PR function. We don't spend loads of money on organising that. We had this process of consultation planned from here. What we didn't account for was that gap between an article coming out post Showman's Show last year and now, and that gap has been filled by quite a lot of information that doesn't really speak to the realities of what's proposed or what we intend to do. So from here on in, there will be more information. We'll be talking to everyone. There's been some questions around the governance of EIF. A statement has gone to our members. And when it comes to that organisation, it's our members we owe an answer to. A statement has gone to the members, and they've been given an idea of the timeline of some of the updates on how that's going to be happening. But yeah, from here on in, it's always been the plan to have a very clear line.
Okay, I think that will help people to understand, because I think silence doesn't account for support for people. So, and not putting too fine a point on it, but I think that's important.
What I will say, though, Annie, is that we, as the board of the EIF, and we've spoken today, are all in agreement that certain behaviours, when it comes to levels of harassment or almost bullying behaviours, are not acceptable. And we will not respond to that, and we will not deal with that in a public forum.
That's fair enough. Jim, anything to add to that?
No, I totally support that.
Okay. So those were all my difficult questions. So I'm sorry if that was a bit quick fire, but I did want to come to everyone. I did want to give everyone the last sort of 10, 15 minutes to ask anything they want to. So hopefully we've been able to answer quite a few of the tricky things. But hello, do you want to? Shall I come? Shall I?
I can be quite loud when I want to be. Can you hear me okay?
No. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. There we are, way too loud. Tom Rees from the Production Services Association, co-chair, a member of the IF, and I'm really an interested party in several reasons. Taking your own presentation in account, you say it's non-binding. If it's non-binding, and this is a double-parter, if it's non-binding and it involves primary authority mentality, why would anyone, A, take it up if it's non-binding, and B, why do we need another local authority like Brighton and Hove involved when the IF may actually just be the arbiter or the adjudicator between two parties who don't see eye to eye? That's my question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, for clarity, so the opinion is non-binding, but the suggestion is that in terms of due diligence and due process, it carries some weight. So to say that you've gone through a process and it's been examined and the experts have been contacted, I think would carry a bit of weight. It's going to be to other local authorities to make their decision, just as with the guidance. whether or not they want to follow it. So any local authority could say, I know Purple Guide says 200 toilets, I want 250, and that's that. That could happen now. But what we want to do is make sure that the guidance is as clear as possible. Why would anyone do it? Is for that due diligence piece, and that in the post situation, did you do everything to check that your plans were safe? Well, we went through this process and we were really happy with the way that was received, and we've got a little bit more reassurance on that.
I think just to add to that, I think when I was looking at primary authority, and the reason I came round to primary authority in thinking how we dealt with all these issues, is it's already an established system that government understands, and it's important that we bring the industry operators with government together in this area. So I just felt that was a good established mechanism which we could adopt and work with. And as I think Ian said earlier, we're hoping it'll get through the Secretary of State and be accepted in the way we're trying to do it.
I mean, I did get a nod from Tom. I'm hoping that's answered the question. Thanks, Tom, as well.
We've
It's a really
got to be
important
quick,
question.
Jim, because there's not much time.
Good luck. Any more? Tim Owen, hello. This is my challenge Annika bit.
Hello. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for keeping the Purple Guide up and running and updated, because separately to this, you've done a great job for us and continue to do it. So that's the first bit. The bit that I'm interested in is how many times in the last, say, 3 years could have used the primary authority in the way that you're saying this. I think it's important to know what the base of this is. It's an idea at the moment, and you're pressing as hard as you can, but a bit of reality into this about how many times would be helpful to everybody as we go through the process.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think that's one of the questions we want to answer. Just earlier when we said how many people work across various local authorities, maybe half of the room put their hand up when asked how many people have experienced inconsistencies, half that again. So if half of the people working across multiple authorities, half of those people that are experiencing inconsistency, there's a case there. I was speaking to someone earlier today who said, you wouldn't believe the number of times I have to write the email, but nobody else has asked me that. Now, this is all anecdotal, and I think therein lies the problem, Tim, that what we don't have is any qualitative data to look at this, and that's part of the job of a prime authority, is to collate that data so we really understand the scale of the issue. It may be that it is a less of an issue than we expect, and then that's good news.
Tim, are you happy with that answer? Thank you, I've got a thumbs up. So, Simon, can I come to you in a minute, because Luke's caught my eye. So, Luke and then Simon, if we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I was going to ask Tim's question, actually. I think that is a really important question, that we truly understand the scale of this. We work in multiple local authorities, and we've never been beaten around the head with the Purple Guide. And I do wonder if what would be more effective is if the EIF supported that position, that the Purple Guide is guidance and cannot be used for beating people around the head with, and that actually if the effort was implemented on speaking to local authorities, if requested to say, no, you can't put this in your premises license, it's against section 182 guidance, and no, you can't tell us, and you can't tell this event organizer they must have 250 toilets. This is not a regulated industry, and you're not the regulator. That would be just as effective without going down the primary authority route, and actually would reinforce the guidance element of the Purple Guide in a way that would perhaps be a different approach.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one of the things we do push very hard, though, through the Purple Guide is that every event is unique and should be looked at from a risk assessment point of view. We've always pressed that. But yes, I take your point. It's something we can consider.
I guess my answer to that, Luke, would probably be that what this puts in place is that additional bit of evidence. So if there is a local authority who perhaps have a bit less experience and are chained to the Purple Guide because they don't have the money to employ people who have lots of experience in the industry, and they go, well, this is what I've got to hang on to. This is the Bible. What we can do with primary authority is say, look, we're talking to LAOG, we're talking to these authorities. Here's how other authorities are dealing with it. Can we help you to ease away from that position? So by talking a local authority to local authority, as we've had the pleasure of doing through LAOG, there's real ability to share that best practice across, and we can draw on some of those links to try and ease the way for local authorities that are perhaps a bit more risk averse.
Hello, Simon James from the Event Safe Shop. I'd just like to ask, it seems there's a bit of a misnomer in the way that you're approaching one side of the Purple Guide. Is it's not specific, it's not absolute guidance, it isn't, it's general, and yet we're then going to ask people to make specific decisions on most event organisers who are struggling with a local authority are struggling about something very, very specific. But that's not what the Purple Guide is about. So I don't quite understand why, and again, going back to the approach of this, surely we all want, and I think there's lots of people in this room who would like SAGs to be more consistent, and the education of the local authorities in what they can and can't do would be far more helpful than us trying to come together and use a system that was never really designed for it to get something that isn't really going to be that helpful other than to that one specific person for that one specific question.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point to make. I think what I don't want to do is talk about the process around SAGs. There's a really good piece of work going on there through Ben Crabb and the UK Resilience Academy, and that's not for us to get drawn into today. I think inevitably, if this system works, it will appear in SAGs because there'll be that conversation about what the Purple Guide says or how it can be applied. I totally see your point, but I think what you might find is that quite often it's where there's a piece of real or a lack of clarity within certain sections of the Purple Guide, and we know that they are there, leaves space for too much interpretation. What this can do is see where that's happening lots. So we say over here it's this same area that's being raised as an issue. Over here it's that same section of the guide that's being raised as an issue. Over here it's that same section of the guide that's being raised. Okay, do we need to look at this whole chapter and rewrite how this chapter reads to find a path that's easier to find compromise as opposed to conflict? Does that make sense? Sort of.
I think that also comes to the point that we welcome your input as well to the Purple Guide, because we can look at changing bits of the guide if it's not working, but we need that feedback, and that really helps us make sure the guide is doing its job properly.
And I think it is difficult because we're drifting into other areas that maybe are not for this panel but need to be discussed in line with that, because actually the whole piece, the holistic piece of this includes Purple Guide, it includes SAGs, it includes all those different things. So I actually take Simon's point, and I think we could be here for an hour just discussing what Simon's just come up with. So I think we've got time for one more question. If we've overrun a tiny bit, but is there anyone who has a burning question? Hello.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking us through that presentation. I think that one of the key things that comes up to me, you can probably tell by my accent, is some of the reserved and devolved issues that exist around the application of primary authority. The UK events industry and the Purple Guide is UK guidance. It was written by the UK industry. And without it sounding like I'm painting a saltire on my face, and I say this as a Scotsman that lives in England, what engagement, if any, is taking place with the likes of the Scottish Government, with Event Scotland, with counterpart agencies in Wales and in Northern Ireland to establish how we don't inadvertently create a two-tier guidance system?
I could probably answer that. I've had conversations with both. I think we felt that we really wanted to establish how it's going to work in England first, and then adapt whatever we need to for the devolved nations, because some aspects they come at it in a different way. So it's easier really to try and get iron out any issues with it in England before we move on to the dealing with all the devolved nations. And we need, in each case, we've got to establish a local authority to work with in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland as well.
And to a degree, around some of the legislation that backs up the guidance of the guide, we already see that too, Tier, don't we? You know, often the legislation is quite different in Scotland, particularly around licensing and legal requirements. So you already have a bit of a gap there, but yeah, that'd be sort of phase 2 if it's something that proves to be useful.
I think we need everyone to consult on exactly those things. So I think, you know, if you have the opportunity to consult, I would highly recommend you do. And, you know, firstly, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's here, because we weren't really sure how this panel was going to work and whether we were going to be stuff was going to get thrown on stage, or whether it was going to be lovely. And it's been actually really lovely to chat this through in a very professional environment. I think, you know, running UKCMA, take away from EIF for a minute, it can be very hard and thankless when you are trying to do good things. And so, you know, from one group of people trying to do good things to another group of people trying to do good things, thank you to you both for today. I think if I was going to say anything to end today, it would be, however you feel about this, negative, positive, or unsure, take the time, if you were given the opportunity, to consult in the proper, appropriate way, and spend the time. Take that energy and time to do that, because we are all limited for energy and time. Let's use it in a wise way, and if that consultation is coming out, and if this is the first that we've all heard that actually consultation is on its way, let's grab that opportunity with both hands, because if the industry says this isn't what we want, then these guys are going to listen. That's the undertaking today. That's what I feel. And so, you know, let's take that, you know, let's take that as a win. Let's all do the right thing, the professional thing, and take the time to consult when it comes up. So for me, that's the most important thing, and that's the process certainly we at UKCMA will commit to. So on that note, Ian and Jim, thank you so much for your time, and everybody, thank you so much for coming today.